Hey everybody, welcome to the first writer's workshop. This is a basic general intro, who we're going to be covering and what book we're going to be reading and talking about. The Beard Barian was supposed to be on tonight, but due to technical difficulties, his computer being as a crappy lappy as mine, he is in the live chat instead of live on the stream. After I do my introduction and introduce the author whose book I am going to be reading this evening, if anybody would like to come in, I will throw you an invite on Twitter. I had to shut my Discord down so it doesn't slow my computer down. So without further ado, every other Thursday, I am going to be reading out of a book by a certain author who we're going to highlight this evening, like I said. We're going to talk about the passage that I had just written, what we like about it, how their style is, how it affects you, and whether you think you're going to be interested in me continuing the reading. So it's sort of like a book having to buy the book, unless you have money later on and get interested in the book yourself and decide to pick it up. Now, as a full disclosure, I do have the stream monetized, and I'm going to see if they make me unmonetize it because I am actually reading a book from a famous author. So let's just say this is going to be an experiment in and of itself. The person whose book I am going to read is Patricia Cornwell. She is an author that I have read a lot of books on. She used to be a chief medical examiner of Virginia. And when she's not writing her books, she still researches cutting-edge forensic technologies so she can include them in her book and keep the realism going in her books. Patricia Cornwell, for those of you that are not familiar with the author, writes books that are from the forensic point of view, murder mysteries, where she writes about dealing with police and also the forensic science behind how they capture the person who is committing the crimes in the novels. This evening is going to be a surprise for me as much as you guys, because I am going to be reading an excerpt out of Post-Mortem. And I don't remember ever reading this book of hers. I think this is the first in her Scarpetta is the chief medical examiner in her books of the series. I tend to like this genre of book, and I hope you guys do too. So without further ado, let's get on with Patricia Cornwell's Post-Mortem. All right, Chapter 1. It was raining in Richmond on Friday, June 6th. The relentless downpour, which began at dawn, beat the lilies to naked stalks, and blacktop and sidewalks were littered with leaves. There were small rivers in the trees and newborn ponds on playing fields and lawns. I went to sleep to the sound of water drumming the slate roof, and the dreaming was terrible dream as night dissolved into the first foggy hours of Saturday morning. I saw a white face beyond the rain-streaked glass, a face formless and inhuman like the faces of misshapen dolls made of nylon hose. My bedroom window was dark when suddenly the face was there, an evil intelligence looking in. I stared blindly into the dark. I did not know what had awakened me until the telephone rang again. I found the receiver without fumbling. Dr. Scarpetta? Yes? I reached for the lamp and switched it on. It was 2:33 a.m. My heart was drilling through my ribs. Pete Marino here. We got us 15602 Berkeley Avenue. Think you better come. The victim's name, he went on to explain, was Lori Peterson, a white female, 30 years old. Her husband had found her body about half hour earlier. Details were unnecessary. The moment I picked up the receiver and recognized Sergeant Marino's voice, I knew. Maybe I knew the instant the telephone rang. People who believe in werewolves are afraid of a full moon. I begun to dread the hours between midnight and 3 a.m. when Friday becomes Saturday and the city is unconscious. The medical examiner on call is summoned to a death scene, but this wasn't ordinary. I had made it clear after the second case that no matter the hour, if there was another murder, I was to be called. Marino was there. Marino wasn't keen on the idea. Ever since I was appointed chief medical examiner for the Commonwealth of Virginia less than 2 years ago, he'd been difficult. I wasn't sure if he didn't like women or if he just didn't like me. Berkeley's in Berkeley Downs South Side, he said condescendingly. You know the way? Confessing I didn't, I scribbled the directions on the notepad I always kept by the phone. I hung up and my feet were already on the floor as adrenaline hit my nerves like espresso. The house was quiet. I grabbed my black medical bag, scuffed and worn from years of use. The night air was like a cool sauna, and there were no lights in the windows of my neighbors' houses. As I backed the Navy station wagon out of the drive, I looked at the light burning over the porch. Why is the barbarian ticked off? Oh, somebody's messing with his beard. Don't mess with the beard. All right, let me see here. Where was I? Over the porch. Okay. The first story window leading into the guest bedroom where my 10-year-old niece Lucy was asleep. This would be one more day in the child's life I would miss. The airport Wednesday night, our meals together so far had been few. There was no traffic until I hit the parkway. Minutes later, I was speeding across the James River. Tail lights far ahead were rubies, the down skyline ghostly in the rearview mirror. Fanning out on either side were plains of darkness with tiny necklaces of smudged light at the edges. Out there, somewhere, is a man, I thought. He could be anybody. Walks upright, sleeps with a roof over his head, and has the usual number of fingers and toes. He is probably white and much younger than my 40 years. He is ordinary by most standards and probably doesn't drive a BMW or grace the bars in the Slip or the finer clothing stores along Main Street. But then again, he could. He could be anybody, and he was nobody. Mr. Nobody. The kind of guy you don't remember after riding up 20 floors alone with him inside an elevator. He had become the self-appointed dark ruler of the city, an obsession for thousands of people he'd never seen, an obsession of mine. Mr. Nobody. Because the homicides began 2 months ago, he may have been recently released from the hospital. This was a speculation last week, but the theories were constantly changing. Mine had remained the same from the start. I strongly suspected he hadn't been in the city long. He'd done this before somewhere else, and he'd never spent a day behind the locked doors of a prison or a forensic unit. He wasn't disorganized. He wasn't an amateur. And he most assuredly wasn't crazy. Wilshire was 2 lights down on the left. Berkeley the first right after that. I could see the blue and red lights flashing 2 blocks away. The street in front of 5602 Berkeley was lit up like a disaster site. An ambulance, its engine rumbling loudly, was along 2 unmarked police units with grill lights flashing and 3 white cruisers with light bars going full tilt. The Channel 12 news crew had just pulled up. Lights had blinked on up and down the street, and several people in pajamas and housecoats had wandered out to their porches. I parked behind the news van as a cameraman trotted across the street. Head bent, the collar of my khaki raincoat turned up around my ears. I briskly followed the brick wall to the front door. I have always had a special distaste for seeing myself on the evening news. Since the stranglings in Richmond began, my office had been inundated, the same reporters calling over and over again with the same insensitive questions. If it's a serial killer, Dr. Scarpetta, doesn't that indicate it's quite likely to happen again? As if they wanted it to happen again. Is it true you found bite marks on the last victim, Doc? It wasn't true, but no matter how I answered such a question, I couldn't win. No comment, and they assume it's true. No, and the next edition reads, Dr. Scarpetta denies the bite marks that have been found on the victims' bodies. The killer, who's reading the papers like everybody else, gets a new idea. So that's the first excerpt in the book. I hope you guys liked the way I read it, minus the 2 or 3 trippings that I did. You can kind of see, if you have a mind like mine, why I would like an author like Miss Cornwell. I like the way she sets the scene. I like the way she sets the tone and the mood. And I like the way that she puts some personal twist in there by mentioning her niece and the fact that, you know, how early it is in the morning, and shows dedication in her character by it not mattering to her what time it is. I like her sentence structure. The commas where I paused at, I think when I was reading this, I actually paused in my brain before I paused it while I was reading it because it adds effect. Oh, sorry about that, Jen. I think the next one's probably going to be either James Patterson, Dean Koontz, or Robin Cook. After we get done with this book, I'll let everybody vote on the next one. Does anybody want to come in to help discuss what we read so far? Well, when I start reading Robin Cook, Jen, you want to come on live after I finish reading so we can discuss it? You guys want me to keep reading, or do you want me to start a discussion?
Cool. Jen's in for the discussion. And
for Robin Cook. Yep. Robin Cook. So that's the date. So just make sure. I'll let you know when it gets closer, and we'll do Robin Cook next. I have quite a few of his books in my closet. I don't have any of his books. I'd have to find them. Probably. You want me to keep going? Okay, I'll keep going. All right. Recent news accounts were florid and frighteningly detailed. They went far beyond serving the useful purpose of warning the city's citizens. Women, particularly those who lived alone, were terrified. The sale of handguns and deadbolt locks went up 50% the week after the third murder, and the SPCA ran out of dogs, a phenomenon which, of course, made the front page too. Yesterday, the infamous and prize-winning police reporter Abby Turnbull had demonstrated her usual brass by coming to my office and clubbing my staff with the Freedom of Information Act in an unsuccessful attempt at getting copies of the autopsy records. Crime reporting was aggressive in Richmond, an old Virginia city of 220,000, which last year listed by the FBI as having the second highest homicide rate per capita in the United States. It wasn't uncommon for forensic pathologists from the British Commonwealth to spend a month at my office to learn more about gunshot wounds. It wasn't uncommon for career cops like Pete Marino to leave the madness of New York or Chicago only to find Richmond was worse. What was uncommon were these sex slayings. The average citizen can't relate to drug and domestic shootouts or one wino stabbing another over a bottle of Mad Dog. But these murdered women were the colleagues you sit next to at work, the friends you invite to go shopping or to stop by for drinks. The acquaintances you chat with at parties, the people you stand in line with at the checkout counter. They were someone's neighbor, someone's sister, someone's daughter, someone's lover. They were in their own homes, sleeping in their own beds, when Mr. Nobody climbed through one of their windows. 2 uniformed men flanked the front door, which was wide open and barred by a yellow ribbon of tape warning, "Crime scene, do not cross." Doc. He could have been my son, this boy in blue who stepped aside at the top of the steps and lifted the tape to let me duck under. The living room was immaculate and attractively decorated in warm rose tones. A handsome cherry cabinet in a corner contained a small television and a compact disc player. Nearby, a stand held sheet music and a violin. Beneath a curtained window overlooking the front lawn was a sectional sofa, and on the glass coffee table in front of it were a half-dozen magazines neatly stacked. Among them were Scientific American and the New England Journal of Medicine. Across a Chinese dragon rug with a rose medallion against a field of cream stood a walnut bookcase. Tomes straight from a medical school's syllabi lined 2 shelves. I know, Jen, it's the way she writes. An open doorway led into a corridor running the length of the house. To my right appeared a series of rooms. To the left was the kitchen, where Marino and a young officer were talking to a man I assumed was the husband. I was vaguely aware of clean countertops, linoleum and appliances in the oft-white manufacturers call almond, and the pale yellow of the wallpaper and curtains, but my attention was riveted to the table. On top of it lay a red nylon knapsack, the contents of which had been gone through by the police, a stethoscope, a pen light, a Tupperware container once packed with a meal or a snack, and recent editions of the Annals of Surgery, Lancet, and the Journal of Trauma. By now I was thoroughly unsettled. Marino eyed me coolly as I paused by the table, then introduced me to Matt Peterson, the husband. Peterson was slumped in a chair, his face destroyed by shock. He was exquisitely handsome, his features flawlessly chiseled, his hair jet black, his skin smooth and hinting of a tan. He was wide-shouldered, with a lean but elegantly sculpted body, casually clad in a white Izod shirt and faded blue jeans. His eyes were cast down, his hands stiffly in his lap. I know I had to back up and repronounce that. I screwed it up. I'm not perfect. Every once in a while I oops. These are hers? I had to know. The medical items might belong to the husband. Marino's "yeah" was a confirmation. Peterson's eyes slowly lifted. Deep blue, bloodshot. They seemed relieved as they fixed on me. The doctor had arrived, a ray of hope where there was none. He muttered in the truncated sentences of a mind fragmented, stunned. I talked to her on the phone last night. She told me she'd be home around 12:30. Home from VMC, the ER. I got here to find the lights out. Thought she'd already gone to bed. Then I went in there. His voice rose quivering, and he took a deep breath. I went in there, in the bedroom. His eyes were desperate and welling. He was pleading with me. Please, I don't want people looking at her, seeing her like that. Please. I gently told him. She has to be examined, Mr. Peterson. A fist suddenly banged the top of the table in a startling outburst of rage. I know! His eyes were wild. But all of them, the police and everybody, his voice was shaking. I know how it is. Reporters and everybody crawling all over the place. I don't want every son of a bitch and his brother staring at her. Marino didn't bat an eye. Hey, I got a wife too, Matt. I know where you're coming from, all right? You got my word she gets respect. The same respect I'd want if it was me sitting in your chair, okay? The sweet balm of lies. The dead are defenseless, and the violation of this woman, like the others, had only begun. I knew it would not end until Laurie Peterson was turned inside out, every inch of her photographed, and all of it on display for experts. The police, attorneys, judges, and members of a jury to see. There would be thoughts, remarks about her physical attributes or lack of them. There would be sophomoric jokes and cynical asides as the victim, not the killer, went on trial, every aspect of her person and the way she lived, scrutinized, judged, and, in some cases, degraded. A violent death is a public event, and it was the facet of my profession that so rudely grated against my sensibilities. I did what I could to preserve the dignity of the victims, but there was little I could do after the person became a case number, a piece of evidence passed from hand to hand. Privacy is destroyed as completely as life. Marino led me out of the kitchen, leaving the officer to continue questioning Peterson. Have you taken pictures yet? I asked. ID's in there now, dusting everything, he said, referring to the identification section officers processing the scene. I told him to give the body a wide berth. We paused in the hallway. This is a little bit of my shilling here. Live chat is active, and the link to my website is down below in case you want to support me any other way. So I'm going to continue the story now. On the walls were several nice watercolors and a collection of photographs depicting the husbands and wives' respective graduating classes, and one artistic color shot of the young couple leaning against weathered piling before a backdrop of the beach. The legs of their trousers rolled up to their calves, the winding ruffling their hair, their faces ruddy from the sun. She was pretty in life, blonde, with delicate features and an engaging smile. She went to Brown, then to Harvard for medical school. Her husband's undergraduate years were spent at Harvard. This was where they must have met, and apparently he was younger than she. She, Laurie Peterson, Brown, Harvard, brilliant, 30 years old, about to have it all realized. Her dream, her 8 grueling years, at least, of medical training. A physician, all of it destroyed in a few moments of a stranger's aberrant pleasure. Marino touched my elbow. I turned away from the photographs as he directed my attention to the open doorway just ahead on the left. "Here's how we got in," he said. It was a small room with a white tile floor and walls papered in Williamsburg blue. There was a toilet and a lavatory and a straw clothes hamper. The window above the toilet was open wide, a square of blackness through which cool, moist air seeped and stirred the starchy white curtains. Beyond, in the dark, dense trees, cicadas were tensely sawing. "The screen's cut." Marino's face was expressionless as he glanced at me. "It's leaning against the back of the house. Right under the windows, a picnic table bench. Appears he pulled it up so we could climb in." Yes, your last video did set me off.
You were requested to shill.
I did. I shilled. Don't forget the super chats down there. Every little bit helps, y'all. I was scanning the floor, the sink, the top of the toilet. I didn't see dirt or smudges or footprints, but it was hard to tell from where I was standing, and I had no intention of running the risk of contaminating anything. "Was this window locked?" I asked. "Don't look like it. All the other windows are locked. Already checked. Seems she would have gone to a lot of trouble to make sure this one was. Of all the windows, it's the most vulnerable." God, I'm losing my Brooklyn accent. Holy crap. "The ground. In back where no one can see what's going on. The bedroom window, because if the guy's quiet, she's not going to hear him cutting the screen and climbing this far down the hall." "And the doors? Were they locked when the husband got home?" "He says no." "Then the killer went out the same way he came in," I decided. Being the style of Mickey Mouse.
Oh my God.
Only you, Batman. Only you. I'm having enough problems maintaining a Brooklyn accent.
Batman has survived this hill.
No, Scarpetta's Italian. Marino is from New York. We'll find that out in later books. I'm sort of giving you a spoiler right now.
I thought she was an Australian.
Yeah, right. Hi, mate. Looks that way, tough. Looks that way. Tidy squirrel, don't you think? He was holding on to the door frame, leaning forward without stepping inside. "Don't see nothing in here. Maybe he wiped up after himself to make sure he didn't leave footprints on the john of the floor. It's been raining all day." His eyes were flat as they fixed on me. His feet should have been wet, maybe muddy. Yeah, he broke me. I wonder where Marino was going with this. He was hard to read, and I never decided if he was a good poker player or simply slow. He was exactly the sort of detective I avoided when given a chance. Why did you have to type that in my live chat? A cock of the walk and absolutely unreachable. He was pushing 50. With a face life had chewed on, and long wisps of graying hair had parted low on one side and combed over his balding pate. At least 6 feet tall, he was bay-windowed from decades of bourbon or beer. His unfashionably wide red and blue striped tie was oily around the neck from summers of sweat. Marino was the stuff of tough guy flicks, a crude, crass gumshoe who probably had a foul-mouthed parrot for a pet and a coffee table littered with Hustler magazines. I went to the length of the hallway and stopped outside the master bedroom. I felt myself go hollow inside. Fucking moo! Hightailed. An ID officer was busy coating every surface with black dusting powder. A second officer was capturing everything on videotape. Lori Peterson was on top of the bed. The blue and white spread hanging off the foot of the bed. The top sheet was kicked down and bunched beneath her feet. The cover sheet pulled free of the top corners, exposing the mattress, the pillow shoved to the right of her head. The bed was the vortex of a violent storm, surrounded by the disturbed civility of middle-class bedroom furnishings of polished oak. For those of you just joining in, I'm reading Patricia Cornwell's Post-Mortem. This is the first book in her Scarpetta series. It's a murder mystery by the way of the forensic investigation sense. I will give it to you once, and that's it, but I'm not going to read it as that because it's really, really hard to do Mickey Mouse all the way through a book reading.
I know.
It is. Oh boy, a phone call. Oh. I need something. I'm going to take a sip of this. Jen.
There's a story behind that voice, Jen.
There's a story behind the voice, Jen. She was nude. I can't imagine Mickey Mouse ever saying that, but there you go. On the colorful rag rug to the right of the bed was her pale cotton gown. It was slit from collar to hem, and this was consistent with 3 previous cases. That was well worth it. On the nightstand nearest the door was a telephone, the cord ripped out of the wall. 2 lamps on either side of the bed were out, the electrical cord severed from them. One cord bound her wrist, which were pinioned at the small of her back. The other cord was tied in a diabolically creative pattern also consistent with the first 3 cases. Looped once around her neck, it was threaded behind her through the cord around her wrists and tightly lashed around her ankles. As long as her knees were bent, the loop around her neck remained loose. When she straightened her legs, either in a reflex to pain or because of the assailant's weight on top of her, the ligature around her neck tightened like a noose. No, I can't.
Gerbil.
Oh my God. I have to be in the right mood for any kind of Australian accent because it's not doing it. It's not working tonight. And I don't care how much you pay me, I can't do a Scottish or Irish accent, so that's out. Sorry. And I will take this break to say I have Super Chat active, and my website is down in the description if you guys want to support me in any way. Every little bit helps. Thanks, Diz. Death by asphyxiation takes only several minutes. It's a very long time when every cell in your body is screaming for air. You can come on in, Doc, the officer with the video camera was saying. I've got all this on film. I'd have to listen to sound clips, Batman. Watching where I walked, I approached the bed, set my bag on the floor, and got out a pair of surgical gloves. Next, I got out my camera and took several photographs of the body in situ. Her face was grotesque, swollen beyond recognition, and darkish blue-purple from the suffusion of blood caused by the tight ligature around her neck. Bloody fluid had leaked from her nose and mouth, staining the sheet. Her straw blonde hair was in disarray. She was moderately tall, no less than 5'7", and considerably fleshier than the younger version captured in the photographs down the hall. I know I said I wasn't going to do this, but there you go, Wolfie. All right. No, I can't do Optimus Prime. I would need Optimus Christ for that. Her physical appearance was important because the absence of a pattern was becoming a pattern. The 4 strangling victims seemed to have had... No, I can't read in Scooby-Doo style, sorry. The 4 strangling victims seemed to have had no physical characteristics in common, not even race. The 3rd victim was black and very slender. The 1st victim was a redhead and plump. The 2nd a brunette and petite. They had different professions, a school teacher, a freelance writer, a receptionist, and now a physician. They lived in different areas of the city. Fetching a long chemical thermometer from my bag, I took the temperature of the room, then of her body. The air was 71 degrees, her body 93.5. Time of death is more elusive than most people think. It can't be pinned down exactly unless the death was witnessed or the victim's Timex stopped ticking. But Lori Peterson had been dead no more than 3 hours.
I hope Sager's here too. Sager and Liz. Welcome.
Her body had been cooling between 1 and 2 degrees per hour, and rigor had started in the small muscles. I looked for any obvious trace of evidence that might not survive the trip to the morgue. There were no loose hairs on the skin, but I found a multitude of fibers, most of which, no doubt, were from the bed covers. With forceps, I collected a sampling of them, minuscule whitish ones, and several seeming to have come from a dark blue or black material. These I placed in small metal evidence buttons. The most obvious evidence was the musky smell, the patches of a residue, transparent and dried like glue, on the upper front and back of her legs. Seminal fluid was present in all the cases, yet it was of little serological value. The assailant was one of 20% of the population who enjoyed the distinction of being a non-secretor. This meant his blood-type antigens could not be found in his other bodily fluids, such as saliva or semen or sweat. Absent a blood sample, in other words, he couldn't be typed. He could have been A, B, AB, or anything. As recently as 2 years earlier, the killer's non-secretor status would have been a crushing blow to the forensics investigation. But now there was DNA profiling, newly introduced and potentially significant enough to identify an assailant to the exclusion of all other human beings, provided the police caught him first and obtained biological samples, and he didn't have an identical twin. Yeah, I know. She did say others.
What?
Marie, sorry about that. Somebody was knocking on the door. Are you gonna go to the store?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
All right.
Poor Liz, you missed it. Shirt was off the list.
You're bad.
I know.
All right. Marino was inside the bedroom right behind me. The bathroom window, he said, looking at the body. Well, according to the husband in there, jerking a thumb in the direction of the kitchen, the reason was it was unlocked because he unlocked it last weekend. I just listened. He says that bathroom's hardly ever used unless they got company. Seems he was replacing the screen last weekend. Says it's possible he forgot to relock the window when he finished. The bathroom's not used all week. He glanced again at the body, has no reason to give it a thought. Just assumes it's locked. A pause. Kind of interesting. The only window the killer tried, it appears, was that window. The one unlocked. The screens to the rest of them aren't cut. How many windows are there in the back of the house, I asked. 3. In the kitchen, the half bath, and the bathroom in here. All of them had slide-up sashes with a latch lock on top. You got it. Meaning if you shone a flashlight on the latch lock from the outside, you probably could see whether it's fastened or not. Maybe. Those flat, unfriendly eyes again. Shh. Come on. Let me see, where was I? But only if you climbed up something to look. You couldn't see the lock from the ground. Hey, everybody. Thanks for coming. I hope you guys are enjoying my reading, however many interruptions or dog whinings there happen to be. Yes, my dog. Ronan left to go to the store, and he had to whine at the door. I am not. Shut up, Batman. You mentioned a picnic bench, I reminded him. Problem is, the backyard's soggy as hell. The legs of the bench should have had left depressions in the lawn if the guy put it up against the other windows and stood on top of it to look. I got a couple of men poking around there now. No depressions under the other two windows. Don't look like that killer went near him. What it does look like is he went straight to the bathroom window down the hall. Is it possible it might have been open a crack and that's why the killer went straight to it? Marino conceded, anything's possible. But if it was an open a crack, Maybe she would have noticed it too, and at some point during the week. Maybe, maybe not. It is easy to be observant retrospectively, but most people don't pay that much attention to every detail of their residences, especially to rooms scarcely used. He inserts himself into every crime scene, trust me. Thanks, Teddy. Beneath a curtained window overlooking the street was a desk containing another numbing. Let me start that over again, since all of a sudden I'm glitching this time. Isn't that funny? Beneath a curtained window overlooking the street was a desk containing other numbing reminders that Laurie Peterson and I were of the same profession. Scattered over the blotter were several medical journals, the principles of surgery, and Dorlands. Near the base of the brass gooseneck lamp were 2 computer diskettes. The labels were tersely dated, 6-1, in felt tip pen and numbered I, and 1 and 2. They were generic, double-density diskettes, IBM compatible. Possibly they contained something Laurie Peterson was working on at VMC, the medical college, where there were numerous computers at the disposal of the students and physicians. There didn't appear to be a personal computer inside the house. On a wicker chair in the corner between the chests of drawers and the window clothes were neatly laid a pair of white cotton slacks and red and white striped short-sleeved shirt and brassiere. The garments were slightly wrinkled, as if worn and left on the chair at the end of the day, the way sometimes I do when I'm too tired to hang up my clothes. Oh, very funny, Batman. I briefly perused the walk-in closet and full bath. In all, the master bathroom was neat and undisturbed, except for the bed. By all indications, it was not part of the killer's modus operandi to ransack or commit burglary. Marino was watching an ID officer open the dresser drawers. What else do you know about the husband? I asked him. He's a grad student at Charlottesville. Oops, wrong voice. He's a grad student at Charlottesville. Lives there during the week, comes home on Friday nights. Stays the weekend, then goes back to Charlottesville on Sunday night. What is his discipline? Literature is what he said, Marina replied, glancing around at everything but me. He's getting his PhD. In what? Literature, he said, slowly enunciating the syllables. What sort of literature? His brown eyes finally fixed unempathetically on me. American is what he told me, but I get the impression his main interest is plays. He seems he's in one right now. Shakespeare. Hamlet, I think he said. Says he's done a lot of acting, including some bit parts in movies shot around here, and a couple of TV commercials, too. The ID officer stopped what they were doing. One of them turned around, his brush poised in midair. Marino pointed toward the computer diskettes on the desk and exclaimed loudly enough to grab everybody's attention. Looks like we'd better take a peek at what's on these suckers. Maybe a play he's writing, huh? Maybe we can take a look at them in my office. We've got a couple IBDs, I offered. PCs, he drawled. Yo, piece the hell out of my ass seat. One Royal Crapola standard issue, black boxy sticky keys, the whole 9 yards. An ID officer was pulling out something from beneath a stack of sweaters in a bottom drawer. A long-bladed survival knife with a compass built into the top of the black Shit, let me go back. I lost my place. Okay. Thank you, dog. Okay. Thanks, Zeph. I see. There we go. A long-bladed survival knife with a compass built into the top of the black handle and a small whetstone in a pocket on the sheath. Touching as little of it as possible, he placed it inside an evidence bag. Out of the same dresser drawer came a box of Trojans, which I pointed out to Marino was a little unusual since Laurie Peterson, based on what I had seen in the master bedroom, was on oral contraceptives. Marino and the other officers began the expected cynical speculations. I pulled off my gloves and stuffed them in the top of my bag. The squad can move her, I said. The men turned in unison as if suddenly reminded of the brutalized, dead woman in the center of the rumpled, turned-down bed. Her lips were pulled back, as if in pain. From her teeth, her eyes swollen to slits, and staring blindly up. A radio message was relayed to the ambulance, and several minutes later, 2 paramedics in blue jumpsuits came in with a stretcher, which they covered with a clean white sheet and placed flush against the bed. Lori Peterson was lifted as I directed. The bedclothes folded over her, the gloved hands not touching her skin. She was gently placed on the stretcher, the sheet pinned at the top to ensure no trace evidence was lost or added. Velcro straps made a loud ripping sound as they were peeled apart and fastened across the white cocoon. Marino followed me out of the bedroom, and I was surprised when he announced, "Oh, walk you to your car." Matt Peterson was on his feet as we came down the hall. His face was wan, his eyes glassy. He stared at me, desperately, needing something only I could give. A word of comfort, the promise his wife died quickly and did not suffer, that she was tied up and raped after the fact. There was nothing I could say to him. Marino led me back through the living room and out the door. The front yard was lit up with television lights floating against the background of hypnotically flashing red and blue. The staccato voices of disembodied dispatchers competed with the throbbing engines as a gentle rain began to fall through the light fog. I am not reading 50 Shades of Grey. No. Reporters with notepads and tape recorders were everywhere, waiting impatiently for the moment when the body was carried down the front steps and slid into the back of the ambulance. The television crew was on the street, a woman in a snappy belted trench coat talking into a microphone, her face serious as a grinding camera recorded at the scene for Saturday's evening news. Bill Boltz, the Commonwealth's attorney, had just pulled up and was getting out of his car. He looked dazed and half asleep and determined to elude the press. He didn't have anything to say because he didn't know anything yet. I wondered who notified him. Maybe Marino. Cops milled around, a few of them aimlessly probing the grass with their powerful Kell lights, and some of them clustered by their white cruisers and talking. Boltz zipped up his windbreaker and nodded as he briefly met my eyes, then hurried up the walk. Yes, this was set. Her first book was actually set, I believe, in the 90s. Let me go back to the table of contents. Let me see here. I'm on page 65. I think this one was written in the late 90s, early 2000s. The chief of police and major sat inside an unmarked beige car, the interior light on, their faces pale as they periodically nodded and made remarks to reporter Abby Turnbull. She was saying something to them through an open window. Waiting until we were on the street, she trotted after us. Marino warded her off with the flap of a hand and a "Hey, no comment," and a "screw yourself" tone of voice. He stepped up the pace. He was almost a comfort. "Ain't this the pits?" Marino said with disgust as he patted himself down for his cigarettes. "A regular tree-ring circus. Jesus Christ." The rain was soft and cool on my face as Marino held the station wagon door open for me. As I turned the ignition, he leaned down and said with a smirk, "Drive real careful, Doc." And that's the end of chapter 1. I hope you guys enjoyed that reading. Stops, starts, and stutters and all. I don't know about reading Mein Kampf. I know after this one, I'm going to read Robin Cook so I can have Jen on the stream and we can discuss the book. Does anybody want to hop in and discuss what I just read? Thank you, Pagan Butterfly. Thanks, Liz. All right. I will send the link to your Twitter. Hang on. Let me get over there. Okay. All right. Let's see here. I'm sending invites now. Holy smokes. All right. Let's see. Okay, I sent one to Liz, and I sent one to Batman. Thanks. Yeah, I had to shut Discord off because my computer bogs down if I have Discord on and I'm trying to do this. Okay, I sent one to Liz, and I sent one to Batman.
Somebody's got their speakers on.
It's not me. Yeah, I had to shut Discord off because my computer bogs down if I have Discord. Nope, that was me. I don't know how the heck that happened all of a sudden when it wasn't before.
Shit happens. It's the internet. It's
yeah, no. This book was late 90s, I want to say. This is one of the first novels.
You read it quite well. It seems like a good story, but you can tell it was written by a woman.
No. She was a medical examiner. Yeah. I like her realism and the fact that she actually used to be a chief medical examiner.
Mm-hmm.
And that really helps a lot with the realism.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there was a lot of realism there, but like I said, you could definitely tell it was a woman writing it. There's a different subtlety to it than if a man wrote it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's worse or better, it's just different.
Yeah. I didn't know how the voices would be received because I'm just used to when I used to read bedtime stories to Paul, I used to use the voices for all the characters. So.
But not Mickey Mouse.
Mm-mm. Can't do Mickey Mouse all the time.
Yeah, you had me in stitches, to be perfectly honest. Yeah, I'm easily amused.
I'm glad everybody enjoyed it.
It was very well done. My headset. Hello. Read the side chat real quick.
I read it.
Oh, isn't that just delicious? How are you getting the potato to do all that stuff there? It looks good.
Believe it or not, it's not OBS. What I did was I used my skin that I wanted to use for OBS for my desktop. And then I just did the slide and snaps that Windows 10 affords me and just reshaped the windows.
Nice. So, you know what? You do what you got to do. Please consider donating to any of her links below so she can get a new computer because we need to step up Mad Woman's computer of dooms.
Yeah.
I did.
Yeah, I cracked. The first time I used my Brooklyn accent actually was, I think, with Ronan when he was driving and we were in New York. And he was.
You got a super chat, Dark Art. Sorry.
Yeah. Not much. Be just a thanks for your support. And thank you for coming, Dark Art, and thanks for the super chat.
Every little helps, doesn't it?
Yep, every little bit helps.
Yeah, I mean, I'm surprised Sir Wolfie there hasn't done it because we all know he's rich.
Apparently.
With names. Yeah, I was a little nervous at first doing this because reading live is a whole lot different than recording your voice and editing it out later.
Pretty much, yeah. Especially when you get idiots in the chat trying to make you laugh.
Well, it's kind of fun doing it this way because in my peripheral vision, I see my name popping up in the orange box, so I have to address everybody because I don't want to ignore my chat.
Yeah, that's probably why we flock to your live streams.
Your live streams.
Liz always ignores her chat.
I do not. I do not ignore my chat at all. Maybe I would ignore them a little less, though, if they didn't constantly say I have a big black cock.
Well, we know you haven't got a big black cock.
It's not that big. It's average.
Lightly tanned.
Lightly tanned. So, yeah, the person who wrote this, you can definitely tell they used to be in the medical field dealing with that, and that's really good because they dumbed it down enough for a layman to be able to understand it as well. And that's something when you're writing or doing anything that you have to remember. That if you're getting into technical details, you have to make sure that the average reader can understand without insulting the intelligence of the more intellectual. How do you find that balance for you, Mad Woman?
I find it really good. That's why I like reading her books. Of course, when it comes to murder mystery novels, I'm kind of a little more curious to see how the forensic side works more than just, police investigation, because we know what the police investigation is from watching cop shows.
Yeah.
And reading it from that side in novels. Reading it from the forensic point of view and the medical examiner sense, it's really fascinating to me. And for the one novel that I have to finish editing and put the cover on, I actually really had to do some research. And I had a friend of mine that was also a medical examiner that told me how a crime scene worked and how you had to secure the crime scene. So she had to edit that one scene for me to make it realistic.
You ever need any help with trying to make that realistic and stuff? I know a lot about it, and I know how to, say it in layman's terms without it. And if I can't say it, I know how to look it up to get the right word.
Yeah.
But, yeah, because there's a couple of authors out there that will, when they're writing, that they just assume that you know something. And, there's nothing wrong with making your audience have to look something up every once in a while. But, dude, you lose being lost in the story when you have to go, wait, what's that?
Yeah.
So you got to... Yeah.
The book that I was reading, I just finished reading the first chapter of Dark Art, is Patricia Cornwell's Post-Mortem. It's her first book in her Scarpetta series.
Is that early on in her writing career as well?
Yeah, it is. According to her bio, it says here that, let me see, she earned an English degree from Davidson College in 1979, and she began working at the Charlotte Observer, taking whatever stories came her way and rapidly advancing from listing television programs to covering the police beat. Cornwell received widespread attention and praise for her series of articles on prostitution and crime in downtown Charlotte. From the Charlotte Observer, Cornwell moved to a job with the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner of Virginia, a post she would later bestow upon the fictional Kay Scarpetta, who is the main character of the books. And when she's not writing from her Boston home, she tirelessly researches cutting-edge forensic technologies to include in her work.
Have you ever read really old books with investigation and stuff like that? Because I like, anybody that knows me knows that I like Rex Stout and Nero Wolfe. You've got to read the original stories, not just the radio broadcasts, because they kind of screwed it up a bit.
I had a friend that lent me a book that was a Sam Spade novel.
I've tried reading the Maltese Fulton once.
Yeah, I think it was called The Thin Man. It was a Sam Spade novel, and it was really funny, but it was really interesting at the same time.
Yeah, books that put in humor with that are, of course, are something that I'm gonna like. And boy, does Rex Stout, or he did a good job. Of course, he's dead now. But I like reading things that talk about forensics and stuff from a time and before we had the technology. It's really cool to sit there and think about wow, we would just have to do this to get that answer. Wow, that must have been so much harder. Yeah. So it brings more of a challenge to the mystery for me.
Yeah. It also means that you can't, if you're writing say a detective story in the 70s, you can't. You've got to find different ways to get the detective on track, because there's some things that he just wouldn't be able to find out.
Yeah.
Yep. Whoa! What is my dog doing? Well, my dog just knocked over some shit trying to get underneath the blanket.
Yeah, I like this book, and I think the very first mystery novels I actually read were police procedure mystery novels, written by Ed McBain. And not very many people have heard of Ed McBain, but I like him because he really throws you into the police precinct and the detectives investigating the case, because it's not just one case in the book. There's 3 cases going on in the novel at once.
Why is everybody doing SpongeBob shit with Gary?
I don't know.
It's not SpongeBob, it's Fallout 3.
Oh.
I'm going to be rotating books in and out, Dark Art. The next time I'm going to do a Robin Cook novel, because Jen said she was willing to come on and talk to me about, me while I'm reading it. Then I'm probably going to do James Patterson. I've got to find the Terry Pratchett books.
Yeah, Joe will get out of my head.
Hey, you know what you could do is you can make it a Patreon thing that if they donate to your Patreon, they could suggest a book.
I think, yeah, before you do that, Mad Woman, I'd like to suggest Moving Pictures by Terry Pratchett.
Ooh, okay. Because I've got on my computer the entire series of Drist.
I read some of, and then I watched the movie based on it, which was the Pigman, or wait, was it Pigman? It was Hugs. It was the Christmas ripoff. What is it called, Fred? You know what I'm talking about? It's Satyr Cat. What is it? The fucking.
No. Oh, no,
like Santa Claus was like the pig man.
The Hogfather.
Hogfather. What is the Hogfather? Yes, Hogfather. Yeah. And yeah, that's some wicked ass shit. Alternate dimension Santa Claus.
Oh yeah.
Oh wow.
From the Discworld.
From the Discworld, yeah. Very interesting.
I believe the world is wrong. You are crazy.
I might, for nostalgia purposes, read I, Robot. I love that book.
There's a horror writer I could recommend. I don't remember his name. Richard Matheson, I think. No, it's not Richard. Not Richard Matheson. He wrote Their Thirst. Robert R. McCammon. And the book is Their Thirst. It's personally, I think it's the best vampire story I ever read.
Put it in the Writers Workshop channel of my server.
Yeah. Liz sounds like she's heard about it.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty good. I read crap. I don't remember names very well, which also means I don't remember titles very well.
Yeah, you also read Ball.
See, my
Ball rather, read Ball.
My favorite books always seem to be written well before I was born. It's really funny. Yeah. So, like, if you like a really good vampire story, and you like murder mystery, there's a book called All in the Family, written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, which is the creator of Sherlock Holmes, and it's a Sherlock Holmes Dracula crossover. It's fucking fantastic.
Oh, cool.
So you've got vampires, you've got murder mystery, you've got old style whodunit, and you got Sherlock Holmes in his original form. Fucking brilliant book.
Yep, I think
it's called A Family Affair. A Family Affair. That's the name of it. Not All in the Family. It's called A Family Affair.
Cool. Because I think I am going to, when I switched gears from this one to Cook, I think my next one is probably going to be the first book in the Dark Tower series.
Zeph says Anne Rice's vampire series was one of my favorites. Oh. I'm a little biased because I'm friends with P and Elrod on Facebook. And I like P and Elrod a lot better now. After, well, there's a feud going on between those ladies. And I went to New Orleans and there was this big vampire ball thing, and there was this Anne Rice ball that she was supposed to show up to, and she didn't make it because she'd gained too much weight and was too tired.
Oh, good grief.
Like, this entire fucking venue was supposed to be meet Anne Rice. She didn't even show up. She Skyped herself in.
Wow, talk about phoning in.
Yeah, literally that. I wasted money on that event. Luckily, there was other events for that a vacation that I took when I was 20. Jesus, that was a long time ago. But still, it's like,
Yeah.
I got a little tired of her sex scenes. Don't get me wrong. I like a good steamy sex scene, but after a while, it's like flipping the pages. You know? Yeah. Don't coitus interruptus me, you know?
Yeah.
It's like everybody cringes, or I get like shouted at when I say this, but I've read most of the all of the Robert Jordan books before he passed away, and I just couldn't get past his pages and pages and pages of nonsensical descriptions.
Yeah, that's what Anne Rice does a little too.
He wrote a Conan novel, and it was the least Conan story I had ever read.
Oh, I love Conan. I love the original Conan. So he wrote one of them?
Yeah, I think it was a sort of Skelos. And it was nothing like a Conan story. The character was nothing like Conan. He'd actually wrote him as basically this big, brutish lout.
He's not a big, brutish lout. He's a big man, but he's highly intellectual as well in his own right.
Now here is
very strategy-driven.
Panel as well as in the live chat. Do you guys want me to read a little bit out of the novel that I'm working on?
Oh, absolutely. I would. Would you?
No, I wouldn't be able to stand it. He lied.
Do it. It's your stream. We want to hear you. We're here to hear you.
Got to show you stuff, Mad Woman.
The name of the book is called Only for Me. And here is the opening for the first chapter.
So you're not going to tell us the name of the book then?
It's called Only for Me. That's the name of the book. Only for Me.
You're reading out of your book?
Yes, I'm reading out of my book.
Then you need that.
Thank you. Okay, chapter 1. When did it all go wrong? It wasn't supposed to end like this. Everyone was supposed to laugh, eat, drink, and have a blast. James isn't supposed to be dead. He shouldn't be lying on the floor of my study. Stephanie stood from the stool at the kitchen island and walked over to the sink to splash water on her face. She was in the middle of toweling off when a detective entered the kitchen. He couldn't have been more than 30. He made his way over to her and offered his hand. She finished patting her face dry, placed the towel on the counter, and shook the detective's hand. There was apprehension in his voice. I'm Detective Stone. Hello, I'm Stephanie. Stephanie Pierce. He could see she was upset. He waited until she sat back down. He reached for one of the paper towels and handed it to her. She took it and began to wring it with both of her hands. He could tell she was trying to keep it together. I know you've been through a lot tonight. Her bangs flew up briefly as she blew a puff of air towards her forehead and rolled her eyes. They were swollen from crying. That's the understatement of the century. Okay enough to answer some questions for me? Before she could answer, an older gentleman in an ill-fitted suit poked his head in the doorway. His voice was rough from years of smoking, and he was brushing remnants of the sandwich off of his shirt and jacket. Alan, the techs are here. He waved in acknowledgement. The tears started flowing down her face again. She dabbed her face with the paper towel and looked at Alan. His mouth was forming another question when a voice cut him off. Honestly, I know you guys are supposed to do this, but don't you think she's been through enough? A redhead had entered the kitchen and made a beeline to Stephanie. She rubbed her friend's back and hugged her. She let out a sigh as she looked up from her friend to Alan. Sorry, I'm Sandra Colson. She reached out over her friend and shook the detective's hand. Her azure blue eyes caught him off guard. He straightened his tie. Do you know who called the police? She stood and smiled. That would be me. Can I talk to you for a moment? She nodded. Let me calm her down first. I'll be right with you. He made his way into the hall. Where did she get these Halloween decorations? Remarkable and creepy. He ran his fingers along one of the props of a clown that had looked half dead. Marcus walked over to Alan. What's up, Sarge? How do you want to handle this? You handle the femmes in distress. He pointed his head toward the living room. I'll question the guests. The sergeant cleared his throat as he reached the entrance to the living room. Okay, everyone, listen up. I'm Sergeant Marcus Riley, and I need to ask all of you some questions. Protests. How long it takes to get this done is up to you. You're either here to wash all the crap off your faces and take your masks off. I'll interview each of you in turn and then let you go home. How does that sound so far?
Wait, what year is this being written?
It's being written in the early 2000s. That's when I read it. Actually, what it is it was a challenge that I did for Nano to write 50,000 words in 30 days.
One thing you might want to change on that is that the cops would have already had the masks off as soon as they entered the house. Sorry, technical thing. Yeah, masks would already be off, so reword that so that way, because cops will not talk to you if you don't have it. Everybody circled around, they would make you take the masks off right away.
Yeah, that's right. And aside from that, it flows well.
It flows very well. I'm just technical about, I know cops do
I like to be technical because I want to be as
realistic.
accurate.
And if I ever like nitpick anything that you're doing before it's finished or anything like that, that's because I want to help.
It sounds like it would be easy to read as well, which is always a plus.
Yeah, easy to read, flowing, very. It draws you in. It makes you want to know what's going on.
And the narrative, which we heard.
My mom and the dichotomy between the two detectives. You got the young detective coming in and the old one that is usually, he's old and he's grizzled veteran. And when I read the part about their contrasting desks, Mom said, "Let me guess. The messy desk and the guy that doesn't like using computers you drew from your father." Yeah.
Yeah, the impression I was getting from the two detectives is the old guy, he just wants to get in, get the job done, and get it over and done with. Mm-hmm. He's not interested in anything else apart from what's in front of him. The young lad's like just taking it all in.
Yeah.
Have you ever read Hieronymus Bosch series, Harry Bosch?
Mm-mm.
Very good shit there. Very good shit. Read one of the Harry Bosch series. And they made a TV series about it. The books just embody this detective and it goes through like his beginning of his career all the way to his retirement and coming back out. The great books, and they're still being written. And it's like the character is aging with the author, so it's really good shit.
Oh, wow.
And the thing about it is that he's got one motto, and that everybody counts or nobody counts. So he cares about the crack whore being murdered behind the building. He's got to find who did that, because if that person doesn't matter, nobody matters. Everybody's life is worth it. And that's like the motto in which he lives by, which means that he gets into the nitty-gritty of life, and it shows the ugly side and the beauty of humanity all at once. It's awesome.
Yeah, I took this challenge because I have a couple of friends that challenged me to do it. So NaNoWriMo.org is a website that challenges budding authors starting in November for 30 days of writing insanity. They challenge you to write 50,000 words in 30 days.
Wow, that's a lot of writing.
Yeah, it's I think it's 1,667 words a day.
See, I'm not much of a writer. I can come up with stories, and then I have to give the idea and concept to Satercat, and then Satercat can flesh them out and give the scene, and I can describe it, but I can't really write it very well because I'm dyslexic, and like I've got all the ideas in the world, I just don't know how to blah them onto paper, and so I'm sorry.
Go ahead, finish.
Oh, I was just going to say, so with when him and I sit down to try to create something, we procrastinate is our biggest problem.
That's mine.
Yeah, we got to let a fire under our ass, and the best thing that we can do is that we come up with the basis of the idea of the plot, and then he can fill in like extra. We need an extra character because we need to push this plot point forward. We need to take this character and meld it with this character to help solidify that. And then he's really good at helping with backstories and how to quickly describe the individual without it taking 40 pages. He's very good at that. So, yeah, we got to finish this book that we've been writing called The Hellions. It's very good shit. Very good shit. It's going to be a graphic novel.
Jason, I had that same problem with my first fantasy story, and what I wound up doing was going back to the beginning, and I started outlining it from the beginning to figure out where my inconsistencies were and where the jumps in the timeline appeared. And then from there, I modified the book to fit the timeline.
Yeah.
There you go. That works.
One thing I got taught in school, when you're writing this, particularly if you're writing an action piece, is you've got to visualize it in your head first.
Mm-hmm.
And it's always best especially if you've got a central character in this action scene, to concentrate all the action around the central character.
Also, there's another trick, which is if is this the most important thing in this person's life? Or the most exciting and entertaining thing in this person's life? If not, why aren't you writing about that?
Mm-hmm.
Right. When you're trying to think of a plot device.
Well, some things that happen in the story.
Workshop channel, and we've got these channels. Maybe a couple of times a week, we could get in my Discord, get into the Writers Workshop channel, and pick each other's brains and brainstorm and see if we can help each other write each other's books, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, right now, Sater and I really need a fire under our ass to finish that. But me working on YouTube, it's really difficult. But if I were to spend, an hour or two talking with him while he writes notes, then he could spend, because he has to work on that part alone. He can come and ask me questions. I have to be available because the stories are always all in my head, but I can't get them out. So we have to have but he needs to sit down and focus, and I can't nitpick him. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, he has to, once he's got a part of it done, he has to go over it with me to make sure that we haven't gotten something wrong for essential parts of the plot. Yeah. And so, it's interesting how we have to work together. It's basically meet up, split up. I draw part of it. He writes. Come back together. Is this right? Is this right? Should I do this? Should I do that? Okay. Split apart, then come back. If we tried to write every sentence together, we would kill each other.
See, Ronan and I are just the opposite, because he knows the kind of fantasy novel I want to write, and it involves some of his characters too. So what I'll do is I'll write, and if the scene in the book involves his characters, I'll write it and then read it to him, and if it sounds like his character, he'll either give me a thumbs up or he'll go, no, they're a little more like this, so I'll go back and rewrite it.
There you go. Hey, that works, because I've had to do that when we've got a lot of it written down. We lost the notepad, and then we found it. Then we lost it again. Somewhere around here, there's almost a completely written book. And, he would write some of it, and I'll be like, wait, that character is actually, you got the characters mixed up. That character likes that character, not that character likes that character because of the final scenes. Oh, shit, I better fix that. And
about little snippet from with Chica Dadelon.
Did you have a brain fart? What?
Dadelon. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Chica and Dadelon are two of his characters that are in my book. They're the ones that created the portal. In the sci-fi fantasy novel that I'm writing, this girl in the future has set up this house for disenfranchised homeless people and abused kids. And she goes wandering through the woods one day, and she finds this portal to another dimension, which happens to be a dimension that is much like Dungeons and Dragons.
Sweet.
And the two people that set up this gate are half dwarven and half gnomish, so you can just imagine their mentality.
What? That means the northern.
You have to understand, Sheik and Dadelon are brothers and everything. Now, they have an eldest brother and everything. He's a little more on the dwarven side than the gnomish, but these two take a little more after their mother, constantly tinkering with anything. Sheik is a purveyor of knowledge, and Dadelon is a linguistics individual and everything. He studies languages.
Yeah.
All sorts of languages.
So you can just imagine when the two worlds clash, because you also have this gang of guys that ride around in this beat-up old Winnebago that they call the Rust Bucket. Well, the first time that they mentioned the Rust Bucket, Dadelon said, how does one convey themselves in a rusted bucket?
And how would one fit all of these individuals inside a rusty bucket, and what propels it?
It sounds like a bad name for a restaurant, the Rusty Bucket.
You want to put a line in there about mobile phones as well, where one of them goes, hold on, I'll call, yeah.
I'll be right back, guys.
I'll call such and such and have a chat with them on the orange. And one of the doors going, how do you talk to somebody on the fruit?
When they introduce another one of the characters to comm units, because they hand him this earpiece and they say, put this on. And they go to another room to say hi to him, and he immediately yanks the thing out of his ear and throws it on the table. Like, what the fuck was that?
Gerbil's on about saying that it's right. She writes a book she's on with writing, I think she said, but she said it's fantasy. And when I do fantasy, I came up with this idea because also in every fantasy story, whenever you get the mage, it keeps stating that to be a wizard, you've got to have an iron will. And I was thinking, well, why the hell's that? Then I came up with the idea. It's because magic is alive and it fights. It doesn't like being controlled.
No,
So
no.
Whenever I write a magic user using magic, he's got to bend it to his will.
Yeah. Guys, I'm going to switch over to the other computer in the living room because I am sweating to death in here. The air conditioner. I'll be back in a minute.
Liz, I think we can see pitchforks and torches outside your window. That might be why.
Oh, God damn it. Did I get teleported to hell again?
No, it's the villagers.
Oh, fuck. I knew I shouldn't have had logic on my channel ever since then.
Okay. Yes, I had this idea and I figured, okay, it's a book club. Sort of kind of like other book clubs, but I know not everybody can afford the books, which is why I'm reading from the book and then discussing it. And I'm glad it worked so far and everybody liked the way that I read the book, because that's the way I read books. I get into the book and I get into the characters.
I'm sorry, I heard what you said, but I didn't, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I like to get into the characters. In other words, be the characters when they're speaking in the book.
Yes, I very much agree with you there.
My kid absolutely loved it when I read him The Hobbit, because boy, did I have to invent voices.
That's part of it for kids.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you've got to get, to me, that was one way of me getting him interested in reading, was reading the book, doing the character voices, and things of that nature, because it always kept him interested. And when I told him it was time for him to go to sleep, he'd always go, "One more chapter, Mom, one more chapter."
Yep, I used to do that as well. The one more chapter bit. I don't have children. I've been lucky so far. To actually read a book and enjoy it, I think you've got to have a little bit of creativity in you to begin with. Because, yes, you've got the description there, but you've got to take that description and build a picture with it in your mind. If you don't have any creativity, no imagination, you just can't do that.
Yeah.
You might as well be reading a technical manual.
Mm-hmm.
Well, even then you need some imagination.
Well, I figured it's not only my imagination, it's the commas are there for a reason. And if you just read the book ignoring the punctuation, you're taking a lot out of the ambiance and the feel of the book, in my opinion.
Yes, you just turn it into a wall of text.
Mm-hmm.
And you're echoing again. Slightly.
I am not going to read in Kim Jong-un.
What?
If I find a comedy novel, then I'll probably read in his.
Oh, right.
Dark art. But
it's not
going to work for the murder mystery.
I think it would, yeah. What if you were reading the Charlie Chan one?
It would. I'll tell you what, Gerbil, you write the book, you send me what you have so far, and I'll edit it to make sure that, you agree with the editing and we can get it all straightened out. How's that sound?
She just posted fun read in the Discord. That quite scares me.
Yeah, it does me too. You never know what Gerbil's going to put in the Discord.
Well, I don't know, but I am certain I will find out.
You probably scream.
Now Gerbil has peaked my truth.
It piqued your curiosity. Yep. Well, that is pretty much it for this particular live stream. So 2 weeks from this Thursday, I will be reading chapter 2. So be on the lookout for the event to set the reminder so you guys will not be late. Thank you for all of your support in the super chat. And don't forget, there's a link to my website below that has my sponsor, my tip jar, and also my Patreon. So until next time, as long as you keep your mind open and your imagination flowing, the story is bound to come.
And keep your